and we came to the small town. The town was so small that the mayor's office was in his house. And we presented our papers from the Russian army. Essentially what it said was to give us help on the way home. So he says, if the Russians want me to help you, I'll do it. So he sounded very eager to help us, right?
Yeah.
So he gave us dinner, and he said, you can stay in the barn overnight, and then you leave tomorrow. Well, tomorrow came, and none of us were able to continue walking. But he wanted us gone anyway. So he arranged for a man with a horse and a sled to take us to Krakow. It wasn't that far anymore, but on foot it would have been far. So we paid him by giving him our excess clothing that we had. Because you couldn't buy clothing. There was no clothing stores. Okay, there were stores. There was nothing in them. In Auschwitz, too. We walked around. Every store was empty. I don't care if it was a hardware store or a chicken store or whatever. There was nothing in stores. Krakow looked the same. So he took us to Krakow. He dropped us in the middle of the city. We gave him the clothing, and he left. And now here we are in the middle of the city. We don't know anybody. We don't know what to do. We don't have any money. You ever tried traveling without money? I wonder if you ever tried that. I think they're called hobos. And somehow they make it. And we're walking around the streets looking for something. Don't even know what we're looking for. I guess we're looking for a place where we can get out of the cold. And we stumble onto a storefront, Hebrew writing. Hias. Ever hear of the Hias? H-I-A-S, I think.
Familiar, yeah.
It's a Jewish organization.
Yeah.
They were big in this country when the immigrants came, and they tried to help the Jewish immigrants to settle.
Yeah.
And we walked in there. Oh, that was just seeing that was something of a pleasure. And we came in, and he says, well, we've been expecting you, because we knew sooner or later you will show up from Auschwitz and from Birkenau. Incidentally, Birkenau, about 5,500 people were liberated, mostly women. Auschwitz didn't have any women. So they knew sooner or later people will come. He says, unfortunately, we don't have much to offer you either, but we will cram up a lunch every day, and we'll find you a room where you can stay, a warm place. And you come down here every day for lunch. We couldn't go out and buy anything. We didn't have a nickel to our name, a penny, or what's the Polish word? Kopeck? Yeah, or something, whatever. You know, I knew kronas, that's all. I knew Hungarian money, panga. Even that doesn't exist anymore, by the way. Nothing exists that I used to know. I might throw in here, I have nothing in my possession prior to the war. Subsequently, my sisters who lived here gave me a couple of pictures from my early youth.
Yeah.
So we're there in Poland, in Krakow, in a big city, and Hias did give us a lunch, and he said, stick around to the end of lunch. If there's anything left, you're welcome to take it with you. So if there was, we took for dinner. If there wasn't, we didn't eat dinner. We've been already organized not to eat much anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long we were there. You know, time just keeps going. It's very hard to relate when you don't have a calendar,
Yeah.
because nothing was running. No buses, no trains. So what you have is, we were stuck, and we do want to go home. At some point, trains started running towards Czechoslovakia. We didn't know how far they're going. We assumed since we came by train, we can go back by train. That was a wrong assumption. We took the train that should taken maybe 3-4 hours to get to where they were going, and it took overnight.
Wow.
I covered myself with a blanket, and when I woke up next morning, I had 6 inches of snow on top of me. But it was kind of fluffy snow. You just picked up the blanket, the snow went. Anyway, we got off the train, and now we are in the middle of nowhere. We're in the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains. We lived in the foothills, but the other side of the mountains. You couldn't go through, trains couldn't go through because eventually they bombed out the tunnel. Should have done that a long time ago, but they didn't. They bombed it out in good time so we can't go home. And we started looking around. There's not even a town there. There's nothing there. And I talked about luck. We got lucky. We found a Czechoslovakian army camp. It's a makeshift camp. It was a big tent, and they had heating equipment in there. And of course, we could speak Czech. That was a pretty good introduction.
Yeah.
And they invited us in, and they gave us some real clothing. Army winter clothing, boots, pants into the, what a difference that makes.
Oh, yeah.
In a scarf, in a sweater, in a big overcoat, in
And gloves.
gloves, and a hat that had earmuffs on it. You know, all of a sudden, and they're cooking. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I might throw in that the Czech people are wonderful people.
That's good to know.
They've always been. There was no discrimination in Czechoslovakia. If they wanted to, they could have picked on somebody off color, say the gypsies.
Yeah.
The only reason they picked on the gypsies because they used to come to town and steal. They were traveling, you know, they were going from place to place, itchy feet, I guess, I don't know. So these people are really taking care of us. And they say they're going back to Czechoslovakia. They're getting ready. They needed some stuff to get ready because you have to cross the Carpathian Mountains, and the snow is so high that once in a while you see the tip of a telephone pole. So how tall is the telephone pole? 25 feet?
Oh, yeah.
That's how much snow there was there. And they had to dig their way through. It took 3 days to go. We stopped to sleep in the truck, and they had their cooking equipment. They were cooking. It took us 3 days to cross, and we landed in a real army camp. And we met a cousin there who was with my brother Mandy in the same camp. He survived, but Mandy didn't. And he told us that Mandy passed away. So you get liberated, and you're looking for some good news, and all you hear is bad news. And they took care of us there too, real well. And at some point, transportation was available. We decided to go. That was a bad mistake. Leave the army camp.
Yeah, what happened?
Because we did go home. And our good neighbors took everything from the house, even took the windows off and the doors.
Wow.
The only thing that was good for us that my father built a house himself. He was a builder, by the way. He had a farm. If you asked him what he was a farmer. But he was also maybe the only real builder in town. And he built our house. It was not a huge house, only 4 rooms, but big rooms. So, you know, you could have 2 big beds in there to double up. Nobody was into this big castles. It was a house to live in. And we just start tearing the barn down to cover the windows. Took the nails and straightened them out with a rock, covered up the windows, made a door, a makeshift door that in each room had a fireplace. So we're tearing the barn down pretty good and keeping warm. And we like to cook, but we didn't have what to cook. Everything is covered in snow. You know, this liberation was not all it's cooked up to be.
Yeah.
A neighbor helped us a little. The funny part that I remember about that neighbor, he always had an issue with my father. And he's the one who helped us.
Oh.
Go figure that out. What was the issue? My land ends here, and he says, no, it ends there. You know, nonsense issues. And my father wouldn't give an inch of land to nobody, even though he had more land than anybody else in town. But he got it, and it's his, and he's not giving it. Okay, I'm like my father.
In your house?
Nobody lived. It was empty.
It was just empty. They took out the windows and
Took out the windows, took out the doors, and whatever food we had, because my father always said, in order to live, you have to have enough grain to last you, not this year, but next year. So we all, because you never can tell when there's a bad year. You know, in the Bible, 7 good years and then 7 bad years.
Right.
I don't know if you read the Bible or not.
Yeah.
So he was prepared. I want to tell you something about my father right now, what came to my mind. He lived the Bible. He was not the most religious person in town, but someplace in the Bible, I read it. I read the Bible every year, week by week, as we went along. It says that you should leave some produce that you grow, fruit or produce, in a corner for the poor. Every piece of land he had, he left. Not necessarily Jewish poor, any poor who came. He lived it.
That's wonderful.
He didn't pick every apple off the tree. He didn't pick every plum off the tree, or pear, or anything that grew. He left it
That's interesting.
for there, and the people in town knew that they can go and pick that.
Good for him. Yeah.
He was a good man, and my mother was a good woman. She would feed, I'm always getting tears in my eyes, thinking about what they did to 2 good people. We had people come through town. The house was like marked. They knew they could come and get a meal. 3 or 4 times a week, we had yeshiva. You know what yeshiva Booker is? The yeshiva is a higher learning.
Yeah.
Here they call them universities, or there was called a yeshiva, to become rabbis.
Yes. Yeah.
And poor people attended. The rabbi put them up, they slept in his house. By the way, my father built that house.
Did he build that himself?
No, he was a builder.
He was a builder. He had people.
He had people to build. He had his own brick factory, had a lumber yard. He had a forest where he could chop down trees if he needed them.
Wow.
So he was a real doer.
Wow.
He was a real survivor. What was the guy in this country? Davy Crockett? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite, but close. So the reason I'm telling you about him being a good man was I attended, I'm going to throw this in the middle of all this.
It's okay.
I attended a gathering of Holocaust survivors in Los Angeles. There was a group called the Children of the Holocaust. You had to have been under 18 years old to belong there. I'm going to take a drink of water.
Okay. Go ahead.
I hope you recorded the fact that I'm
That's
drinking
fine.
water.
That's all right.
Okay, so they had broken up into groups to hold seminars. One group, they said only survivors can attend. So I said, gee, I think I want to see this. What is this all about? So I go in there, and they had a rabbi there. I don't know if you've ever seen how the religious rabbis dress. long black coat, below the knees, and this a tie called a gartel.
Yeah.
It had to be black with little fringes on it. They have their own, not just like the big black hat.
Yeah.
This guy looked like that, but he was a young guy. He proceeded to talk, and how he's not even worthy to conduct us. One guy said, "You're worthy. Let's go on with it. This is an hour. We don't want to stay here. You explaining how unworthy you are." So we started. But he says in that process that the Holocaust was preordained by God. He says. That's what I said. And we started out, everyone should get a chance to say something. I'm sitting on the end. I thought I was at the beginning. I said, gee, good, I'm in the beginning. I'm going to climb all over him right now. So I'm on the end. So some people live with that it was preordained by God. They can buy that. Some people just climbed all over him. And I told him my own, when it came to me, I said, how could God? I said, I'm not sure I believe in God, by the way. But let's just say I do. How can a God kill my mother and my father, who did so much good in town, who fed the rabbi because the town couldn't take care of him well, who gave away so much food, who did so many good things, to preordain this kind of an affair? Well, he says, God has his reasons. So anyway, that man really turned off a lot of people.
Wow. I can't imagine people. I mean, there are so many people that just don't believe in God anymore. They went through that
sure.
experience.
Some people came out very religious. Others came out like myself and my brothers. Actually, my brother David, he was still a religious person. He passed away about 4 or 5 years ago.
I don't know how people can continue to believe in God when these terrible things happen.
I don't either. What really gets to me is, these really religious people, I can't think of the word thank you in Jewish, but it amounts to, what? Well, thank God, thank God anyway, for all the good things. Well, how about thanking God for the bad things then, in that case? If you give him credit for the good things, God gets the bad credit too. So...
It's only right, I think so.
Now, I'm going to stop here for one reason or another.
Okay.
We did get home.
Okay.
And, my brother Bernie did some unbelievable thing. He was an unbelievable man, but you can get that when you go on the website.
Okay, so you did get home, but you didn't talk about how you came to America.
It's in there.
Where? It's in the website?
The website.
Okay, you don't want to talk about it?
I could, if you want to.
Just a little bit, yeah.
All right. So you are going to undoubtedly download that.
Yes. Yeah,
and so you're going to get a lot of flavor. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to tell you.
A little bit,
I'm going to tell you about Bernie. Bernie came looking for us. He went through the war in American uniform. He was overseas for, they had those little stripes every 6 months, or it was like that, He landed in Marseille.
How did he wind up in the American Army?
Well, he came to this country before the war.
Okay.
He was not a citizen, by the way, but they drafted non-citizens.
Okay.
And then there's a little story there, too. He went overseas, and they wouldn't allow non-citizens to go fight in the army, fight.
Yeah.
So when his unit was going, they pulled him out that unit got massacred.
He was lucky. Wow.
Yeah. So most of them who did survive got really hurt, and they were hurt badly. And one of them, a friend, wrote home saying that I don't see Bernie in the hospital, so I assume he didn't make it. He didn't know that Bernie got taken out. They made him a citizen right there, and then he can go fight.
Oh.
So Bernie wound up in Marseille, as I said. He was a mess sergeant. And the way he became a mess sergeant was that one day they grabbed him and said, make coffee. And they made coffee, just a big kettle, dropped in there, and then you scooped coffee. So a couple of days later, he said, the cooks, they're looking for the cooks. Well, he don't answer. He says, do I have to go look for you? You guys who made coffee, you're the cooks. So he became a cook all of a sudden. And he got promoted to buck sergeant, and he was a mess. He became the mess sergeant. And in Marseille, any leftover food, he would take it out and give it away to people. So Bernie was a one-of-a-kind guy. He would do or give anything to anybody.
He was older than you.
Yes, he was third oldest. So he came looking. He got a 7-day furlough to come looking for us. And first stop was Budapest, and the Russians were taking over, as I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. So David, who was the oldest in our group there that we were, he said, I'm going to Budapest to find out what's going on in the world, because we can't stay here because the Russians are going to annex this place. And Bernie found him in Budapest on the sidewalk. Population 1 million. Would you like to explain that to me?
Wow.
And he knew that we're not going to stay. We're going to go to Romania. That was the closest place to go to, cross a certain, I think the river is called Tisa. That's the second biggest river in Hungary. There's the Danube and the Tisa. They both run parallel and meet someplace, Bulgaria, I guess, in that area. So they came to Bilki, and we weren't there. So David says, no problem, I know exactly where they are. We had cousins in Sighet, Romania. That used to be Hungary at one time. When it was a great Hungary, Austria was big. So he came over there. He gathered us up. He hired wagons to take us to the nearest train, which was in Hungary. And he bribed the guards on the border. First of all, he talked to them in Hungarian, wearing a uniform, an American army uniform. He gave him American cigarettes. And he said, why are you going to Hungary? He says, well, we're going to Hungary because we're looking for some fun. You can't have fun in Romania. The Hungarians are very nationalistic. He says, oh, yeah, you can have a lot of fun in Hungary, and we'll see you on the way back, which, of course, never happened. We finally got to a train. We got on the train. We could travel free, by the way, with those papers.
Yeah.
In Russian. Anytime a Hungarian talks to you in Hungarian, you answer in Russian. That's the end of it. So he took us to a place in Czechoslovakia where it was, I'm trying to think of the name, something does escape me, but it was the American zone. I don't know if you know, but part of Czechoslovakia was occupied by the Americans. Mm-hmm. Pilsen, that's it. Okay. Pilsen. I was thinking of beer, and it came back to me. So he goes in first to report in. He's been gone 7 weeks with a 7-day furlough. And he explained to him about transportation, and they realized, they knew that. He said, there's no problem here. you have enough furlough coming anyway, probably, since you've been in the Army in the war that long. So it's okay. He said, I want to take my family with me to France. He says, you can't do that? He says, well, I'm not going then otherwise. So there's this argument going around. They finally said, you can take your youngest brother. That was me. And they wrote out papers. And he says, there is a convoy going to Germany, which will get you to France eventually. So I don't know if you've ever seen an Army truck. I was in the Army, by the way, so I know what they're talking about. There were Dodge trucks, and they all had a box in the back of the truck right behind where the people were sitting in the front. They put me in that box. And they gave Jack the papers. See, I got on there before the convoy is inspected. Jack had my papers, so he got on. And I didn't want to be separated from Jack at that point. And we went into Germany, went to Frankfurt. We stopped in Nuremberg, and we went to the Red Cross to get rations to eat. And I'll give you the menu what the restaurant served. They were not prepared much there either. So the food was soup with some green leaves in it. The main dish was like a tortilla, a little better quality. And that was stuffed with some leaves and sweetened or something. No, it was seasoned.
Yeah.
That was the dinner, and of course you get dessert. Now you got a sweet tortilla with green leaves sweetened. That was the menu. So we come to finally to Frankfurt, and there's a troop train going to France, but there was an American troop train, and nobody was getting on there. Not a French soldier, not a British soldier. And Bernie came prepared. He was carrying a few bottles of Slivovitz. You know what that is?
No, wine.
No, that's brandy.
Oh.
Made from prunes mainly.
Oh.
But it's really made from a mixture of everything, but predominantly prunes. And that's the word, a Russian word, slivovitz. It means prunes. Slivovitz always meant brandy. You can buy it in stores, slivovitz. So he gave 2 of those bottles to some officers, and they let us on the troop train to go into the baggage car. Bernie, of course, he had orders showing, so he was going back to France. And when the train left, they found us a couple of old trains, wooden benches. Everyone had one wooden bench, so you can lay down and sleep there.
Yeah.
And when we came to the border before, they covered us up with a blanket. And, you know, I had a very young-looking face, so I didn't look like a soldier. So they put an army hat on me, pulled it down, and the blanket covered up to here. And the French went through with a flashlight, quick look.
Yeah.
It was a very superficial inspection. In every place we stopped, I heard, hot chow. So finally I asked Bernie, what does that mean? So that's the first words I learned in English. Hot chow. What it really was hot coffee, cocoa, and donuts. So that's, I got introduced to donuts. Hot
You
chow.
like them?
Oh, I like them. I try not to eat them, but I like them. So that's what's happening. So we finally landed in Paris, and they take tickets from you when you come out. So Bernie knows that. Well, we don't have any tickets. He's in uniform, he don't need anything, you know. That's a 600-pound gorilla in those days.
Yeah.
You go and you do whatever you want to do. But he knew that they're going to ask tickets from us. So he went out ahead and he tells us, come close to the gate, and I'm going to bring a cab up there. And when you see the doors open on the cab, walk through the gate. The guy's going to ask you for tickets, you just keep walking. And we did. We keep walking into the cab, and this guy runs after us asking for tickets. Cab door closes. We leave, and he's still waving. He wants the tickets. It was like a comedy.
It's funny.
Yeah, it was very funny. I didn't understand it, but I knew what he was doing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the guy says, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. So we stayed in Paris for about 3 days. Bernie had a relative in Paris, a brother-in-law. And then we went on to Marseille. He says, I want you to Marseille, and I'll find a place for you there. Food is no problem, he says. I cook food. So we went to Marseille, and he takes us to this small inn where he was bringing food. And he wants to put us up there to sleep. He wants to pay me. He says, oh, no, you don't pay. No pay. Let them stay as long as they like, he says. So Bernie gave us some money, and we stayed there. Every morning we'd get up, Jack and I walk down a block to a bakery and buy a bag of baguettes. And the baguettes over there could be like that, or it could be like this, you know, little, instead of the conventional rolls, you've seen those things, Italian restaurant. We buy a bag of them, come to the man, and he gives us coffee, and I would drink that coffee because cafe au lait, coffee and milk together. Yeah. We're sitting on the sidewalk and eating. Now, how could life get any better than that, you know?
That's great.
That's for, so Bernie left us because it was time for him to go, and we went back to Paris and we registered at the embassy. And the day I walked in, instead of being Edward, I became Edward. They changed it for me. I didn't do anything. I wouldn't argue with them, would I?
At that point, yeah.
No. Call me whatever you want to call me. I appreciate the fact they took my word for it that was me. I didn't have any papers.
Honey,
Wow.
don't you think it would be nice to take a break and get a bite or something?
To get what? Okay.
Listen.
Okay. No, we're not going to eat now. It's only 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. We'll finish this.
Okay.
Okay, so it took us a year to get here.
To get to the States?
Yeah, it was very difficult to leave because all the ships were hauling soldiers home. But because we were not citizens of France, and we declared to them that we're not going to stay, they wanted us gone. So every ship that left Le Havre, that's where we left from, the French government had about 8 room for about 8 people. And we bought a ticket for them. We arrived here in June the 23rd, 46, and we stayed in New York about 2 or 3 days.
Is that where you landed?
Yes.
New York?
New York Harbor. And we didn't go to that channels that they had there before because they switched where they came aboard ship and they checked everybody out.
Yeah.
So, what's it called? Ellis Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were not using it. So that's what took place. And we went to Buffalo. That's where the family lived. And my sister Leona and Trudy's mother were friends from Europe. They were approximately the same age. Within maybe a couple of years. So they were friends, actually. And she invited her over to meet us. You know, it's like, hey, look what I have here, you know. 2 people from the concentration camp. And she brought her 2 daughters.
Trudy
was one, and she's the older one, and Margie, the younger one. And Jack and I are there, so we got paired up, sort of.
Yeah, that's nice.
To walk around.
Dates.
Dates. That was not blind, we saw them. But, yeah. So anyway, at the end of the day, I go to Leona because I can't talk to her. I'm speaking several languages, but English is not one of them. So I go to Leona and I say, Leona, why did I get paired up with Margie? I'd rather go with the other one. So Leona said, that's just not going to happen because she's the older one and Jack is older. So that was that. That's the end of that. There's no big deal there. I went in the Army in 1948. They were drafting, and I couldn't wait to be drafted, so I enlisted for 2 years. And I went in the Army, and Leona tells me, she gives me New Year's cards. She says, you're going to be there, and in this country you send New Year's cards to friends and relatives. She gave me a list who to send them to, and I sent them to whoever. The only response I got was from her. But there was a letter, not a card, and it didn't sound like a letter from the family. It sounded like a letter from her.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I think maybe I'll just answer that. But my English was awful. I don't know how she understand what I was writing. Because I was writing like it sounds,
Yeah.
you know, phonetic.
Yeah.
So we started corresponding. And pretty soon I went to see her. She was going to Carnegie Tech, and I got transferred around from place to place, but I wound up in Washington, D.C. in Walter Reed Hospital.
Oh.
I went to school for dental tech, and there was a dental lab there, and that's where I landed. And so whenever there was something big going on in Carnegie Tech and college, like homecoming, I don't know, whatever, I would go down there. And subsequently, we got engaged. And it was her birthday, and I actually gave her the ring the day before because I couldn't wait to give it. And I did, and
that's a beautiful story.
yeah, and we got married, and
Yeah.
we got married. I was going to come out after 2 years, but they froze me in for one additional year, so I stayed until 1951. It was no hardship.
That's when I was drafted into the Army.
In 51? Sure, they were still drafting.
I was in from 51 to 53.
Yeah, 1950 is when I was supposed to come out. And anyone who got discharged in 1950 got called back anyway.
Yeah.
So, in essence, that was a break for me because I stayed where I was, in Walter Reed. And I had a nice job. I worked in a dental clinic, a dental lab. It wasn't the dental clinic, the dental lab, but it was. I came in at 8:30 in the morning and left at 4:30. You know, it was a nice job.
Good hours. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got married right after So I'm not going to tell you the story how I got married because you don't like it. I tell people I got an invitation to a wedding. When I got there, I found out it was my wedding. She don't like that story.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But he had the ring in his pocket. So it was.
He was prepared.
Somebody put it there, Trudy. I didn't do that.
That was there too. Oh,
That was fun.
Yeah,
That's
all right.
a funny story.
So that's what it is. We have 4 children. We have 4 grandchildren,
Oh,
and
that's good.
and
Yeah, this is a good way to end it. You just
and
talk about your
that's
children.
it.
And you wound up living in Arizona. So you
After
that
being
was a long way.
after being everywhere, we lived in Buffalo. We lived in Pennsylvania. I went back to Buffalo because I didn't like Pennsylvania for whatever reason. And from there I went to Arizona, Tucson,
Because
and
he did that.
asthma. And from Tucson I went to El Paso and with a job that I finally did get. And I was there maybe 3-4 years. I moved to Phoenix where I stayed maybe a few months. I moved to California. And now I'm back to Phoenix.
Since when? What year?
I came here 4 years ago,
Oh, okay.
and I live in a place called Goodyear. The development is Pebble Creek. It's a beautiful community.
That's nice. I've been out.
Have you been there?
Yeah. A friend of ours from where we live in a townhouse not far from here.
Yeah.
They moved to Pebble Creek
Yeah.
or somewhere in that area.
There's quite a few people there from Phoenix,
Yeah,
but there's people there from every state in the Union practically.
yeah.
It's a beautifully laid out place. There's everything there.
So you've been there 4 years.
4 years.
That's nice.